At precisely 0600 hours, the stillness over Whiteman Air Force Base fractured with the unmistakable rumble of turbine engines spooling up. Inside Hangar 5, bathed in floodlights and shadowed by steel scaffolding, the black bat-like silhouette of a B-2 Spirit bomber stood ready. To most, it was a sleek symbol of American air dominance. To Captain Elias Ward and Major June Rivera, it was a test of their endurance, discipline, and judgment. Their mission, a 37-hour flight spanning 2 continents, multiple refueling operations, and a stealth ingress over a simulated hostile territory. What began as a routine global strike exercise was already complicated by the political undertone, a quiet flex against rising tensions in the Pacific. Captain Ward, lean and analytical, had spent the previous 2 days poring over satellite trajectories, potential threat vectors, and weather anomalies across the Pacific Rim. A seasoned pilot with 3 deployments, he was known for treating mission prep like a battlefield. No detail too small, no assumption left unchallenged. His co-pilot, Major Rivera, was different. Brilliant with systems and known for her uncanny calm under pressure, she could reprogram flight protocols mid-air while reciting fuel burn ratios from memory. Together, they formed a team both tactical and intuitive, each balancing the other's extremes. At 0735, the hangar doors opened. The B-2, call sign Ghost Dagger, taxied out under its own power, disappearing into the overcast sky like a shadow being swallowed by fog. Their destination was not listed on any public radar, their flight plan segmented across multiple encrypted channels. Even among Allied controllers, only a fraction of the route was visible at any time. Within the first hour of flight, the cockpit atmosphere had settled into a predictable hum. Rivera adjusted the cabin pressurization, syncing it with altitude changes. Ward monitored the primary control surfaces while making minor adjustments to fuel flow distribution. The dual control setup allowed for one to rest while the other piloted, but neither relaxed. Not yet. At 90,000 pounds of fuel and a near-full weapons simulation payload, the craft was heavy and sluggish, needing every ounce of precision during takeoff and climb. Now, cruising at 40,000 feet over the Midwest, the B-2 stabilized into its fuel-efficient configuration, the wings flexing slightly against the wind. By hour 5, silence hung heavy, broken only by routine system chimes and coded updates from mission control. It wasn't boredom that crept in. It was the mental weight of knowing they were only one refueling error or sensor failure away from catastrophe. In previous missions, Rivera had once corrected a cascading avionics fault that could have forced an early abort. Ward trusted her implicitly. Still, they both knew. Trust doesn't replace vigilance. At hour 7, the first refueling rendezvous commenced. Somewhere above the Arctic Circle, a KC-135 Stratotanker appeared like a ghost through the dusk horizon. The maneuver was precise, 20,000 feet, speed 275 knots. As the B-2 inched beneath the tanker, Rivera took the controls while Ward managed the boom-link interface. The refueling nozzle clicked into place. Fuel began to transfer, a silent waterfall in the sky. 60,000 pounds of jet fuel moved between machines mid-air over frozen desolation at a distance closer than 2 sedans parked side by side. That was when the first anomaly appeared. A flicker across the threat assessment screen. A blip, then gone. Ward frowned. He ran a passive radar sweep. Clean. He did it again. Still clean. Could have been a ghost ping, Rivera offered without turning. But Ward didn't answer. A ghost ping was, in theory, a sensor echo, a momentary glitch caused by weather or electromagnetic interference. But to a pilot 1,000 miles from the nearest airbase, a ghost ping was never just a ghost. It was a question mark. And in this aircraft, question marks demanded answers. The moment passed. Fuel transfer complete, the B-2 detached and banked eastward, cutting across the Bering Strait under cover of polar night. Over the next 3 hours, they flew in near total darkness, navigating the void by GPS, inertial guidance, and internal compass. Below them, nothing but black ocean and ancient ice sheets. At hour 15, the autopilot handled most of the long cruise as the pilots rotated their rest cycles. In a fold-down bunk behind the cockpit, Ward lay motionless, not asleep, but conserving energy. His headset was still on, volume low, just in case. Rivera, now flying solo, listened to mission updates. Her fingers traced buttons she already knew by heart. Then, just before sunrise broke over the Kamchatka Peninsula, it happened again. Another ping. This time, 3 in sequence. Slight shifts, like something in the stratosphere was moving with them, not toward, but alongside. The onboard threat avoidance system logged the pings as non-prioritized. That meant they weren't locking radar, but they were there. Rivera checked their stealth vector. It was holding. Emissions were low. Their radar signature should have been invisible. Ward sat up, groggy but alert. She showed him the logs. He stared at the screen. "Could be NORAD testing a new SAT recon pass," he muttered. "Or it could be someone else. Watching." Neither said what they were both thinking, that this training run might not be watched by only their own. For the next 2 hours, they flew in tensioned silence, minds sharp, oxygen levels balanced. They began a systems audit, checking for any trace emissions or possible reflection vectors. Rivera rerouted one of the avionics paths, narrowing their electromagnetic trail. Ward prepped an evasive flight plan in case they had to abort the mission and arc south. But nothing came of it. By hour 23, they reached the simulated strike zone, somewhere over a test range in the Pacific. They executed the weapons drop simulation without error. Perfect run. The data uplink confirmed target acquisition and simulated destruction. Mission success. But the pings lingered in their heads like a shadow over a clean record. They began the return leg in silence, and yet neither of them noticed the smallest glitch, deep in the aircraft's sensor logs, a pattern the system hadn't flagged. It wasn't a ghost. It was a mirror. Somewhere above the Philippine Sea, the stars had vanished behind a shroud of storm clouds. Ghost Dagger coursed silently through the upper atmosphere, a black wing slicing the night. Inside the cockpit, the glow of console lights reflected off Captain Ward's stubbled jawline as he monitored the external temperature fluctuations. Minor turbulence jolted the aircraft, but the Spirit held steady. It always did. Designed to evade radar and outlast resistance, the B-2 was as much a psychological weapon as a strategic one. But Ward wasn't thinking about that. He was thinking about the pings, the silent echoes that had followed them like a second heartbeat. Major Rivera, now back at the controls after a short rest, scanned the telemetry stream with narrowed eyes. She hadn't spoken much since they began the return flight. Her mind was caught between calculation and concern. Every sensor sweep came back clean, but she trusted her instincts more than algorithms. And her instincts told her they weren't alone. At hour 26, as Ghost Dagger began its arc northward toward its final refueling point, the mission's central conflict finally sharpened. They were being tracked. Somehow, something had followed them across thousands of nautical miles of open sky. The refueling tanker appeared late, 7 minutes behind schedule. That didn't happen. Not in the realm of strategic bombers where every second is precision planned. Ward double-checked the encrypted communication logs. No updates. Rivera toggled their secure channel. Static. Then a faint broken signal. Ghost Dagger, vector adjust, new coordinates, refuel point 37 Delta. She glanced at Ward. He didn't answer. His hand was already flicking switches, isolating their comm line. "Do you trust that voice?" she asked. "I don't trust anything that crackles," he muttered. "That wasn't the tanker ops channel. It's either a glitch or someone's trying to redirect us." They pulled away from the original flight path, hovering in uncertainty. Somewhere ahead, the real refueling tanker should have been visual, but radar showed nothing. No beacon, no escort, just sky. Ward initiated a passive ping, a low-frequency check only a true ally would recognize and respond to. No response. Silence. They weren't about to follow a ghost transmission across the Pacific. Then Rivera saw it, just off their port wing, barely visible against the stars, a shape, sleek, sharp, glinting faintly. It wasn't broadcasting identification, it wasn't using active radar, but it was there, flying parallel. "Contact, bearing 279, 5 clicks," she said, voice low and controlled. Ward tilted his head just enough to see the silhouette. He didn't need radar to know what it was. Not an enemy fighter, not a commercial plane. It was something else, unmarked, possibly unmanned, possibly experimental. "Did they send a tail without telling us?" he asked. No record of escort. Rivera's fingers danced across the console, attempting an IFF handshake. Identify friend or foe. Nothing. Then we're not being watched. We're being measured. They held course. The shadow matched them perfectly. No closer, no farther. Every altitude change, every vector shift, mirrored within seconds. Whoever or whatever was behind it, they wanted the B-2 to know it wasn't invisible anymore. This was a problem. Not because they were in danger of a dogfight, the B-2 wasn't built for that, but because stealth was their armor. If someone had cracked it, even partially, it meant a new era had begun, one where invisibility could no longer be guaranteed. Ward made a decision. "Initiate radiation ghosting," he said. Rivera blinked. "We'll lose live telemetry. Then we run dark. Dump everything non-essential. No emissions. Let's vanish." With a synchronized sequence, they powered down every active signal, rerouted cooling loops, and adjusted surface control angles to further diffuse heat signatures. Ghost Dagger, the most expensive aircraft ever built, became a wraith again. Silent, dark, blind. But the other craft remained. For 43 minutes it trailed them in absolute synchrony. Never broadcasting, never communicating, never attacking, just watching. And then, without warning, it peeled away, arcing upward in a sharp vertical climb before disappearing into cloud. Rivera exhaled. What the hell was that? Ward didn't answer. Not immediately. He reached for the mission log and began writing by hand. Every ping, every change in flight path, every anomaly. He didn't trust the onboard recorders. Not now. Hours passed. They finally reached refueling point 37 Delta. This time, the real one. The KC-135 appeared on schedule, confirmed by dual verification code. The link-up was smooth, almost anticlimactic, but the tension in the cockpit never left. Because the encounter wasn't the worst part, it was the implication. Someone knew how to find them. Someone had come close enough to shadow a nuclear-capable stealth bomber. Someone had shown their hand without revealing their identity. By hour 34, Ghost Dagger descended into U.S. airspace. The radar lit up with friendly contacts. Satellite relays reconnected. Mission control resumed full oversight. But the B-2's crew had already changed. They didn't celebrate a successful flight. They didn't joke about fatigue. They didn't even acknowledge the mission timer ticking past 37 hours. As the bomber touched down at Whiteman under a drizzling dawn sky, Ward kept his eyes forward. Rivera powered down the engines in silence. Maintenance crews swarmed the aircraft, but she didn't move. She simply said, "They were never supposed to see us." Ward nodded, just once. And now they have. Behind them, the hangar doors opened once more, and the ghosts of the sky returned to the shadows. The after-action briefing room was chilled, sterile, and quiet, except for the faint hum of the air conditioning and the occasional rustle of classified papers being turned. Captain Ward sat rigid in his chair, arms crossed, eyes focused on the large projection of their mission telemetry. Beside him, Major Rivera leaned forward, her jaw tight, analyzing every second of footage, showing that unidentified craft shadowing them in the upper atmosphere. The grainy IR feed confirmed what they both saw, something with advanced maneuverability, riding their airspace like a shadow born of darkness itself. Across the table, Colonel Draper, a high-ranking official from Air Force Global Strike Command, tapped his pen once and said, "You were not followed by a conventional platform." No one disagreed. What had once been a routine 37-hour deterrence patrol had shifted into something unprecedented, proof that America's most invulnerable weapon might no longer be alone in the sky. Ward finally spoke, his voice low. "They were testing us. They didn't just want to see the B-2, they wanted to know how we'd respond." Rivera added, "They knew our exact flight path, before we even knew. That transmission wasn't random, it was a probe." Silence. Draper nodded grimly. "And you didn't follow the redirected coordinates?" Ward shook his head. "It was a false link. We stayed dark and stuck to primary nav protocol." That decision, it turned out, had been a turning point. Intelligence gathered from other assets, satellites, electronic intercepts, and ground-based signals intelligence, suggested the rogue transmission might have originated from a signal spoof node deployed by an adversary nation. The technology to replicate encrypted comms on that level was rare, maybe even new, but it existed. Then came the real blow. A DIA operative entered the room with a folder marked "Eyes Only." He placed it in front of Draper and whispered something inaudible. Draper scanned the pages, face unreadable. When he looked up, he said, "They might have had us locked the whole time." From orbit, Rivera's mouth parted, but she said nothing. Ward leaned back slowly. "A satellite?" "Possibly. Or a high-altitude drone with orbital support. The combination's more troubling than the technology itself." Draper looked at them both. "You understand what this means?" "Stealth," Rivera answered, "is compromised." And with those words, everything changed. Over the next 48 hours, Ghost Dagger was pulled apart. Every bolt, every inch of composite material tested for trace beacons, malware, signal emitters. The Air Force grounded 2 other B-2s scheduled for long-range patrols. Meanwhile, NORAD logged dozens of minor signal anomalies around major bases, all previously dismissed as noise. But now, with new context, they weren't noise at all. They were signals, pings, probes. Ward spent those days in debrief rooms, speaking with analysts, threat projection teams, even NSA specialists. He began to see the mission not as a singular event, but a preamble. Someone had flipped the board, quietly, cleanly, and confidently. Someone had peered through the veil America had worn for 30 years. For Rivera, the implications were even more personal. She had trained her entire career to operate in the shadows, quiet skies, silent runs, unseen footprints. Now, she wasn't so sure those shadows still existed. She found herself questioning the nature of warfare itself. If the next conflict wasn't just about bombs or firepower, but about electromagnetic supremacy, signal warfare, orbital positioning, then what was left of the human pilot's role? In the weeks that followed, Ghost Dagger was returned to hangar storage, deemed too sensitive for further deployments until the breach was fully understood. A new task force was formed, combining elements from Space Force, Cyber Command, and Strategic Command. The name of the task force was never made public. Even Ward and Rivera weren't told what it was called, but they knew its goal: find the ghost in the sky. Months later, an unmarked envelope arrived at Rivera's off-base apartment. Inside was a commendation. No unit listed, no seal, just a single citation. For the silent defense of strategic advantage in contested skies. Your discretion has preserved more than data. It has preserved deterrence. It was unsigned. Ward received no letter, no medal. Just a quiet phone call late one night from an old instructor. The man's voice crackled like old vinyl. They'll never let that flight be logged. But you know what you saw, and that'll be enough. He hung up without another word. Still, the warfighters remained ready. Because now they understood. The real battles wouldn't start with missiles or invasions. They would begin in the margins, in signal shifts, phantom echoes, and moments of hesitation. The kind of hesitation that split seconds and shifted power. On base, Rivera returned to simulation drills, now flying missions where enemy drones could spoof, cloak, or vanish. Ward joined a quiet project to develop a countermeasures suite not yet named, not yet authorized, but both knew that next time it wouldn't be just a shadow watching them in the night. It would be something else, and it wouldn't be testing. It would be coming.